Hey folks, I'm finally back from my very unwanted holiday break, having finally recovered from a wombo combo of vet fees, burnout, and being run over by a car. Yeah, if you were wondering what those few weeks of tiredness were about, there you go. Still, I'd be remiss if I didn't finish my now very slightly scuffed and off-schedule Deck Builder December. God, I hate that I called it that now. Partly, though, I just want to get this done because I really wanted to address the holiday gift I got from Veda, namely developer LocalThunk's poker-flavored roguelite, Balatro. It is, without a doubt, the most conceptually odd title that's been nudged my way this year, and yet I couldn't help but find myself intrigued by how it took a relatively simple idea and just ran with it. Still, was I eager to ace this experience? Or was it busted in the worst of ways? I'm your host, Darlian. Let's find out together. Starting with the story, in that there isn't one. Really, the closest semblance there is the little clownish companion Jimbo, who shows up long enough to walk you through the tutorial and otherwise leaves you alone. Except to either mock you whenever you fail or congratulate you when you succeed at a run. So, yeah, pretty simple on that front, and at a glance you'd think the same could be said of the gameplay, since it's poker, right? Except it's a bit odd, isn't it? For one thing, there's no opponents in the traditional sense of the game. Rather, in order for the player to advance, they need to clear blinds, a threshold of chips they earn through playing hands, with more elaborate ones earning more progress to clear a given stage. The thing is, though, that's a lot harder than it sounds, because not only do you have a limited number of hands and equally sparse discards to form a strategy around, the amount required by each blind increases noticeably between each stage. And that's without even getting into the quirks of the boss blinds during each of Balatro's antes. Because when I said you don't have an opponent in a traditional sense, well, it does provide some unique obstacles, like face cards no longer scoring, or an entire suit being worthless. How about the value of your hands melting whenever you play one? In my case, the boss blinds that ended my runs the most were the ones which forced you to play different types of hand every turn, and the ones which required me to play 5 cards. Because there were times my hand size was, less than that, due to some shenanigans. Which I may as well get into because, those blinds I mentioned? Well, whenever you clear an ante, the value of those blinds jump up significantly, to the point that just relying on your acuity with poker won't be enough really quickly. There's just no way to generate enough chips to clear a stage, and that's where all the silly roguelite elements kick in. The lion's share of which is centered around the shop. See, when I said you weren't betting money on the hands themselves, that didn't mean there wasn't any form of currency to manage. See, after each round, you're granted some cold hard cash based off a few factors, such as the type of blinds you've cleared, interest for every $5 you're holding, and bonuses from certain cards. I mean, you can also get cash through certain cards and joker types, but okay, point is, there's some filthy lucre to be had and a shop to spend it in, and boy are the options it provides fun, foremost of which are the jokers. Yeah, there's a reason Jimbo over there is the game's mascot, because jokers are definitely wild. See, each provides a nifty bonus which makes progressing through the antes a lot more feasible. For instance, some of these are pretty straightforward, such as modifying how your hands are scored by increasing chip values, adding to your multipliers, or even multiplying your multipliers. Others, however, are a bit more indirect, providing things like alternative ways to make money, modifying your deck, or even interacting with other jokers. In and of itself, this is pretty neat, but the part that makes them truly interesting is the fact that most will change the way you play the game. Some, for instance, favor certain cards, suits, or hand types, while others might ask you to discard certain cards to benefit from, which by extension balances their benefit against the ability to modify your hand further. and one of them even removes your ability to discard at all while it's active. I, for one, always found the jokers that scale to be a bit of a laugh. Like the pair that ask you to hoard money like a dragon, or the one that can scale whenever you play a hand based on the number of times you've played that hand, or the one that just scales whenever you play anything, but resets if you play a single face card. And those are the simple ones. Don't even get me started on the ones that mess with your setups, like the knife which eats other jokers to gain a bonus based on the cash value of its victim, which can get busted, or the stencil jokers, which benefit from you keeping your limited joker slots empty, thereby minimizing the kind of strategies you can use, or having you fill those slots with stencil jokers because they count as an empty space, and boy does that get funny. Yeah, no, it's fine. And even that, all of that sort of craziness, that's not even the whole of it, because yeah, while the jokers are certainly neat, there's also consumable modifiers. Celestial cards, for instance, are buffs that affect certain hand types. Unlike jokers, you can't swap them around freely, but they tend to be a lot more affordable and don't really have any stipulations. And you can stack them to the high heavens with the right setup. Tarot cards are another big one, and a lot more varied, providing an assortment of bonuses which can range from modifying your cards in simple ways, to more distinct perks like altering them into cards worth more chips, or lucky cards which can potentially provide money, massive bonuses, or nothing. There's also tarot cards that can do things like throw money at you, create more jokers, and a couple other odds and ends besides. Though the most drastic option has to be spectral cards. While they're a lot rarer than their peers, they can provide some real game-changing options if you don't mind the fact that the costs associated with them are a bit more drastic and often mercurial and destructive. Honestly though, I still wound up gambling on the booster packs whenever they cropped up, which, yeah, while you can luck out at finding specific consumables in the shop, the main source of them is from small randomized packs, which can be really good, or really crappy. And this applies to jokers too, since they also come in packs. But yeah, simply put, there's a lot to fiddle with here, and it's not even done, because if you're a big spender, there's also vouchers to play with. See, during each ante, you'll be provided with a random choice from the pool, and what they do is essentially provide a long-lasting bonus for the entirety of that run, which can range from creating more shop slots, providing a permanent discount to the shop for the run, or providing more hands to play or more discards. They're neat in any case and can go a long way to help, especially if you engage with the challenge associated with each voucher, since that unlocks upgraded versions that you can find after you snag their prerequisite in a run, and things get really silly then. Here's the thing though, clearing those blinds and reaching the shop, well, that's not actually your only option either. See, those first two blinds of the ante, the small and the big blind, you can skip those, which might seem like a bit of an absurd choice given the monetary rewards and shop access, but it's actually not quite as cut and dry as it looks, because whenever you skip a blind, you're offered a bonus, which can range from being granted booster packs, bonus money, better options for a future shop, including free loot, or even things like a larger hand size. What's more, there's actually cards which at times will benefit from not playing as many hands. So it all works together to make this really cool strategic element, and at the end of the day, it's one that's extremely necessary to master, because winning a run requires you to reach and beat Ante 8, and that is staggeringly brutal to reach at first, because not only does that mean beating 7 prior boss blinds with increasingly lofty stakes, it also means coming face to face with the end of the run boss blinds, and these can get a little bit ridiculous. You thought finishing a blind in a single hand sucked? How about one where one of your jokers gets disabled every turn, potentially flatlining the values of your card if they're very contingent on a specific combo? Or having all of your jokers flipped so you can't identify them and then shuffled around? And yes, order matters a lot when you're doing things like multiplying multipliers. Suffice to say, It's pretty brutal, but really satisfying once you get the hang of it, especially as you start to fiddle around with hilarious gimmicks and tackle the optional challenges. Because, well, yeah, as much as I've been sort of talking about just going against the base game, there's quite a few things to pursue on the side, and they're all extremely rewarding given that they're tied to in-game unlocks. For instance, want new jokers to play around with? Well, maybe you'll need to turn at least 30 cards in your deck into a single suit, or play a card with at least 4 7 of clubs in it. How about discarding 5 jacks, or clearing a playthrough in 12 friggin' rounds, okay? That one was really, really annoying to get right. You know, some of it can be pretty tough, really. Though, it does give you the tools to do it, whether it's through the jokers that you're unlocking, but also through the different decks you can unlock. They all go a long way towards helping out. It's just, they also have their own requirements to unlock and earn, albeit generally a little bit easier at first. And they're worth it, considering that they're more than just a set of cards with a different backing. All of them have their own quirks, ranging from simple things like an extra discard or an extra hand, or more comprehensive changes like the flush deck, which only has hearts and spades in it, or the abandoned deck, which lacks face cards. Simply put, they serve as a way to fundamentally change up your playstyle right from the get-go, and pave the way for all sorts of different strategies, and interesting ways that they can interact with jokers right from the get-go for all sorts of wonky synergies. Lord knows I needed the help once I started pushing past White Stake. Because, well, yeah, there's some color-coded difficulty levels to challenge. White Stake's normal. And I really do have to give Balatro credit here because, sure, while some of these difficulties can be summed up as stacking modifiers that make the game more difficult, like steeper blinds, it also manages to introduce some fairly nifty mechanics to boot. Eternal Jokers are specifically what comes to mind here because, unlike their peers, they are permanent addition to your builds, unable to be removed from your slots once collected or even broken. Which is part of where things get interesting because that lends itself to some silly card interactions once you learn to look for the combinations. Yeah, there's a really neat card, for instance, that triggers and breaks a card, but also gives itself a stat boost, and yeah, no, that's just a good card to have around then. Perishable Jokers are, less of a neat addition, since those just fail you in 5 rounds, but, yeah, no, there's neat quirks that you have to adapt around. And it takes a lot, because I have long since lost count of how many hours it took me to clear the final stake. And that was with one specific deck, by the way. These decks that you're clearing the game with, it is counting your progress for that deck. I can't even fathom how long it would take me if I wanted to try and finish that final stake with every single one of the decks in the game. And this isn't even everything. Like, this is a lot. This isn't everything, because there's also endless mode. Because sure, you might get to a point where you're stomping anti-8 fairly consistently, especially on the earlier stakes, once you've had enough practice, but Balatro provides you the option to ante up further and see how far your setup can take you. It's just, if you thought the ramping was brutal as is, well, things only get exponentially harder from there, to the point that it took something like 50 or 60 hours for me to finally reach Ante 12, which was also sort of necessary to unlock the last voucher upgrade I was missing. Yeah. Oh, and there's also the very literal challenge decks, because yes, we're still not done with optional content, and these ones are just cool to engage with since quite a few provide very unique experiences and hurdles compared to their peers. Such as, have you ever wanted to play an entire deck made out of glass cards which are guaranteed to break when you play them and try to get to Ante 8? How about a run where the more money you have, the smaller your hand size is? Me, I'm currently stuck on clearing Golden Needle, which has your discards cost money and only gives you one hand to clear every blind. It sucks a little, and the last 2 challenges after it are also going to be a complete kick in the nuts. Things to do though, I suppose. And on that note, there are a few things I haven't addressed on the gameplay side of things, which may seem minor at a glance, but which are pretty darn useful to know and saved a few of my runs. Like the fact that you can not only arrange the order of your jokers in order to optimize how they interact with each other, given they trigger left to right, You can also do that with cards in your played hand. So if you have multiplier set up or a joker interacting with certain cards, you can arrange them so they activate in your preferred order. It's like just such a small but powerful detail that adds a bit more to the strategy of the whole thing. Much in the same way as your ability to see the remaining cards in your deck. Like, if you're trying to fish for a specific suit to make a flush, or seeing if it's feasible to try and aim for a 3 of a kind or a straight, it is so useful. I'm sure there's going to be at least one statistician in the audience rejoicing at how much this facilitates their job. So, yeah, neat stuff. Just, word to the wise, if you are a veteran of deck builders and you like those smaller decks so you can just cycle through them, be very friggin' careful, because if you mill your entire deck and then play a hand, you're cooked. Your deck doesn't reshuffle, the game just ends. So just be like me and pull stupid shenanigans so you can blaze ahead with a brain-dead high card deck. Truly, the winning strategy is when strategy goes out the window. Something, heart of the cards. I'm definitely not manic after, not being able to do any of this for a while. Yeah, but yeah, that's the gameplay. As for the aesthetics, well, things are pretty straightforward. Soundtrack-wise, while the OST isn't exactly long, what is there sort of this jazzy elevator vibe to it that just somehow works? Like, I feel deranged for saying this, but there's this almost purgatorial, I'm in a dead mall feeling that it somehow manages to capture. And this might be one of the weirdest sentences I've articulated in a room, but yeah, no. That is what the Balatro music experience is like. What you've been listening to this whole while, and I like it. Like, it's weird, but it's something that I can, just tune out and relax to, and it just does such a good job of going through it that it's nice. In comparison, the visuals are a lot easier to address. There's a few neat details in place, like the ability to modify how your face cards look, as well as the details put into the cards themselves for the jokers. But on the whole, it's fairly straightforward. Well, okay, the background's a little trippy. Really, the only thing I feel the need to say here is, for your own sanity, turn on fast animations as soon as you can. It really cuts down on the length of your turn and just makes playing so much smoother. To the point that I feel smooth-brained for not noticing that detail for 50 hours. But yeah, that's been a lot. So let's just get ready to sunset this review and finally share the conclusion I've come to after playing some 73.6 hours of Balatro. Holy hell, is this game like crack. There's such a simple elegance to how easy it is to just pick up and play, but it also provides so much room to construct complex and innovative strategies to conquer the various challenges it puts in your path. And there's no shortage of those, because sure, while some of the decks are fairly straightforward to use, a few of them can be a bit trickier to adjust to and provide their own hurdles you need to adapt to, especially if you hope to conquer the difficulties that come with later stakes. And the challenges? God, figuring out just how I was supposed to get past those was such a good feeling. I really need to confess something here. Part of what delayed this review was the fact that while I was busy being burnt out and just worn out, I kept pausing from my struggles at writing to just go back and play a few more hands of the game. Sure, I told myself it was to farm footage, and a lot of it has wound up here for my editor to pour over and lose their minds because it's 30 or 40 gigs of footage. I wanted to make sure I had something relevant to toss up on the screen, and to make sure that what I wrote was accurate, but also a lot of it was just pure addiction. It was something I could sink into and be comfortable while I was recovering from this crappy forced holiday. So yeah, no, I can't recommend this game enough. It is such a neat, creative title that it easily warrants being called a crit hit. If you are a fan of deck builders, or a fan of poker, or just want something interesting and different, grab it. It provides a lot. Anywho, That's it for this episode. So, you know, if you're still here, thanks for tuning in. If you have something to say, leave a comment. And if you enjoy my efforts to create new indie reviews and interviews, hit subscribe and the bell. For a link to my Discord, the Crit Hit Cauldron, check the description, and check out my Patreon to see reviews early and support the channel, like Andy noted. And also, you know, I have a merch house. You can check out that merch house. It has neat swag like Crit Hit coffee mugs and shirts, and there'll actually be new designs for coffee mugs and shirts if a few people buy the current ones. It's really nice. It's nice art. It's nice art. I got it. I got art done, and it's nice, and we just need to clear out the current mugs and shirts. Anyways, that said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.